Hey guys, we are on day 177 in our Bible reading plan, and today we are reading in the book of 1 Kings chapter 16 and in the book of 2 Chronicles chapter 17. Now 2 Chronicles chapter 17 is going to focus again in on the line of King David and the rulers of Judah, the kings of Judah. So far we've had over Judah and all of Israel. We had David over Judah and all of Israel. We had Solomon, and then we had Rehoboam over the kingdom of Judah. Abijah succeeded him. Asa succeeded him. And then we read in 2 Chronicles chapter 17 that Jehoshaphat succeeds his father Asa to the throne, and he fortifies and he strengthens the cities of Judah and the cities of Ephraim. Verse 3 tells us that the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he followed the ways of his father, King David, before him. And we're going to notice that as really a assessment of the reign of a king is whether or not he follows the ways of King David or whether or not he follows the ways of King Jeroboam. And so following the way of King David is what you want to be doing. He loved the Lord was pleased with him. And so here we read that Jehoshaphat follows in the ways of his father David. It tells us that Jehoshaphat seeks the God of his fathers and that he follows his commands and that he sends the book of the law throughout the kingdom to be taught to all of the people of Judah. And it says that the fear of the Lord falls on all of the surrounding kingdoms and nations, and they pay him tribute like in the days of David. And it says that his army gains strength in numbers. And there are some echoes as you're reading through this of King David's reign and the way that the Lord honored him and showed his favor toward him, built him up, gave him a strong military, expanded his kingdom and his reign, and the way that he amassed wealth from the nations around him. And so you hear this echo of the former kingdom and the former reign there illustrated in Jehoshaphat's reign. It's a cry and a pointer to him following the ways of the Lord and receiving the Lord's favor for that. Then in 1 Kings chapter 16, we're going to be reading about the kings of Israel. And so far, the kings of Israel have been Jeroboam, Abijah, and Asa. And then it's going to tell us in 1 Kings chapter 16, that Baasha becomes king of Israel after Asa. In verse 1, it says, "Then the word of the Lord came to Jehu, son of Hanani, concerning Baasha. I lifted you up from the dust and appointed you ruler over my people Israel, but you followed the ways of Jeroboam." Again, so there's that contrast between following the ways of your father David and following the ways of Jeroboam. So it says, "You followed the ways of Jeroboam and caused my people Israel to sin and to arouse my anger by their sins. So I am about to wipe out Baasha and his house, and I will make your house like that of Jeroboam." If you'll remember, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, the Lord completely annihilated his household. And that's it. That's the end of Baasha's reign. And then we read that Elah succeeded him as king. Verse 7, it says that the Lord destroys Baasha's household. And then as we read on, verses 8 through 14 tell us that Elah reigns for 2 years, and then he's assassinated by Zimri, and all of his household is also killed. And then we read about Zimri's reign in verses 15 through 20. It tells us he reigns for 7 whole days. Omri stages a coup, and so Zimri goes into the royal palace and he sets it on fire, and he dies in that fire. And it's all because it says he follows the ways of Jeroboam. So then we read that Omri rules after Zimri. In verses 21 through 28, we read that Israel then splits into 2 factions. The kingdom is further divided between Tibni, those who are following Tibni, and those who are following Omri. Omri wins, and he reigns for 12 years after that point. And then toward the end of this chapter, we're going to read about Omri's son, Ahab, succeeding him as king. And Ahab is not a great guy. What the scriptures tell us about him is that he does more evil than any one of the kings before him. He sets up altars to Baal. He sets up Asherah poles. He rebuilds the walls and the gates of Jericho on the price of his firstborn and his lastborn sons. he is an evil king and he is doing evil things. He is rebuilding what the Lord has destroyed. And so as you're reading through this today, you're faced with two very different accounts, two very different kingdoms. One kingdom that is following the Lord, or at least doing its best to follow the ways of their father David in Judah, and the Israelites, kings who are reigning over Israel at this time, and they just continue to follow in the ways of Jeroboam, following and departing from the ways of the Lord. And every time they do, you read that the Lord brings judgment on that king. And as I was reading, it just struck me how important it is for leaders, for people who lead, whether you lead in your household, whether you lead in business, whether you lead in the marketplace, or in the church, how important it is for us as leaders to really follow in the ways of our father David, to really follow in the ways of those who've gone before us, who have served the Lord wholeheartedly, who have obeyed his law and his commands. I'm just reminded that when Jehoshaphat sends out the book of the law to be taught to all of Judah in 2 Chronicles 17, that we see the Lord's blessing, that God is honoring him for being the type of leader and ruler over Israel who puts God's word and command first and desires everyone around him to know it so that they too can walk in the ways of the Lord. And as leaders, these kings are influencing people. They're influencing people toward God or away from God, just in the same way that our actions as leaders today influence people toward the ways of the Lord or away from the ways of the Lord. And we have an opportunity every day, in whatever sphere of influence we have, to remind people of the good things that are in the word of the Lord, of the good news of Jesus Christ that we have in the Bible. And we get to share that with others. We get to point them toward the knowledge and understanding of an incredible God who loves us and who has given and done great things to know us, to be in relationship with us once again. And we get the opportunity to share that with others. But we have to make sure that we are walking in his ways if we're going to do that well. And so it's just a great reminder to me today to make sure that I am drawing ever nearer to the Lord, that I am drawing ever nearer in his word and my understanding and knowledge of the truth of his word and what he requires of us. So I hope that encourages you today to just draw ever closer to the Lord, to continue this reading plan you have begun. And if you have gotten behind or not done all of the days, that's okay. Just jump in wherever you're at and keep going. Keep thirsting and hungering after a deeper knowledge and understanding of God's word and what he has done for us and what he requires of us. So that's it today. I would love to hear what God's speaking to you, so throw a comment in the Bible app. Have a great day, guys.